Google. Let's go get him again.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Robes Away channel. My name is Mark. If you are a returnee, welcome back. Thank you so much for the support. If you're new here, don't hesitate to subscribe and say hello in the comments section. And welcome to Sampling Samples. Today is not a Sunday edition. I missed last Sunday, so you are getting a bonus for this week. Today's sample is Cuoium by Orto Parisi. I'm no stranger to the brand of Orto Parisi, or the nose behind, of course, Nasomatto and Orto Parisi, Mr. Galtieri. When I saw this bottle, which is absolutely stunning in that it was a leather-based release from the brand, I felt that this one is possibly blind buy worthy. Now, my fragrance budget, you know, I love a lot of fragrances, but there is some that I can't blind buy. However, my budget did allow me to sample this one this year, so I am going to sample it, see if it's worth it, and then perhaps purchase it or put it on the back burner. So today, that's what we're going to be doing. I own probably a good 30, maybe 40 fragrances that are leather-based in my collection, maybe even more. I never really counted them, but I do have quite a bit. It is one of my favorite notes of all time. And it's basically something that I have a lot of experience with. So it's going to be hard to really impress me, but I look forward to see, because this brand has a really good track record with me. So let's see what Mr. Galtieri did with the note of leather. Let's go under the hood. Let's take a look at some stats on this one. It was released back in 2021, so it already has a few years under its belt. Concentrations extrait de parfum. The nose, of course, Alessandro Galtieri. The nose behind Nasomatto and Orto Parisi. The major notes to my nose, again, Orto and Nasomatto, they don't publish notes. So it's basically my nose versus everybody else's nose to see what I can pick up in this release. The major notes, of course, are leather. It is a leather-based fragrance. That is not really hidden, but there's a good wallop of it. I feel like there's actually a really good backbone of woods. Galtieri likes to utilize woods, especially oud and cedar. So those are the three major players in Cuoium. Let's get to sniffing. So I'm still drugging through my little Lucky Scents bulk sample haul that I did. I think it was the start of this year. So this one is part of that. I am wearing this. It is my scent of the day today, but I left a little bit left. As you can see here, I am going to empty out this sample now. To remind me of the introduction, this one gave me 2 wearings. I did a little wearing, like I wore just a little bit of this, and then the second time while wearing it, I wore a lot of it. So Cuoium, oh man, the opening of this fragrance is fantastic. It's fantastic. It's what I come to expect from the brand. Actually, the whole composition itself is fantastic. I felt like Galtieri here in this particular release took another step here as a perfumier. I felt like there was a little bit more tricks up his sleeve in this release. Sometimes not that they feel redundant, but it feels like we're working with the same stuff always with Galtieri. And it can get old to certain noses, but for me, they never did. This one here clearly smells like a Galtieri release. So he's not straying away from like his darker stuff that you got from the Nasomatto and the Orto Parisi line. It doesn't, you know, move away from that DNA. So you can smell that it's you can really sense his brush strokes in this one early on, that it's a Galtieri release, but you also sense some new tricks up his sleeve here, and that's what I really appreciated with this sampling samples. Now, the opening of Cuoium certainly tells the user this is a leather-based set. If you miss the leather jacket on the bottle or the name of the fragrance and don't really know what this fragrance is all about, maybe you'll get surprised here, but I was surprised how deep and dense this leather was in the opening. I really wasn't expecting that deep and dense of a leather note. And And of course, with his background, yeah, with, you know, Black Afgano and Duro and Pardon, and if you keep going and going throughout the bigger, bolder Nasamatos, I named a bunch, Orto Parisi, same thing. They are big and bold, so I don't know why I was surprised, but I was. This leather is raw. It's rough. It's tumble, and that's how I like my leathers, are rough and tumble. They have some dustiness to them. They have some bite to them. They feel animalic almost. Here it does. It is a rich, deep, truly dark leather scent. So you gotta like those bigger, bolder leather scents that I absolutely love, and this is where it's at. I wanted to say in this review that it smelled like a dusty leather saddle on a horse. It's been places. It's on an animal. These are the imagery that I'm getting out of this thing, or even a leather stained tool bag that. You know those tool bags that roll, like the old school tool bags that's seen a few years, that they've seen some dust, they've seen some oil on them, things like that. But I really want to go basically a step backwards here and say this leather is raw, it's stiff, it's just starting its tanning process, it's oily, it's wet, it smells of ink a little bit. That's where I'm going with this imagery of the opening of this release. It's a neat trick here. And the one trick that I felt was utilized here is the animalics in Cuoium. And it's the animalics from the oud here that really make things interesting in this release. I sense some Indian oud in this fragrance. Not as dark or as barnyardy as the one in the night, which I recently reviewed from Frederic Malle. But it's in, bring it down 3 pegs, the animalics. Like, it's not big and bold, but it's just there to pique the user. So the animalics in here are very light in this fragrance, really light, but what it does is this oud gives the leather the life it once was. And as strange as that sounds, Indian oud can come off barnyardy, and it's so minimal here, but it shows itself. Also, Indian oud does give off leathery tones, which definitely has in here. Spicy tones, yes. Smoke, yes, it's in here. Hay-like qualities. I get all of that in this release, which really complements the main player, which is, of course, the leather in this release. This animalic touch is only here for the opening. Then really, like, it leaves suddenly. I mean, it really doesn't stick around, but the more this scent goes on my skin, the more the tanning process of the leather lightens it. So the leather itself, it almost goes through a phase that, off the animal, as bad as that sounds, it has really those animalic type scents in here, and they're not big and bold, but they're there. And then it just goes through the process, and it goes a little lighter the more it goes on skin, to almost a beautiful suede-like leather. It's quite a story, and I'm happy I kind of got the story of this one, at least in my mind. I feel like this is the story of it off this little sample, because usually with Orto Parisis it takes several wearings, not 1 or 2 like I did with this one. So it does take time. If you recall, and I wrote in my notes, the first time I wore this, the opening of this release, when I first tested it out, I didn't put enough on my skin that I really wasn't getting the full story, but on my second wearing, I kind of dosed myself in this little Lucky Scent sample, as much as that's a joke. It showed me all the facets of this leather, and it's quite beautiful. So that almost fecal, and I want to say that very lightly, rawhide leather nuance is beautiful, even for that small window of this release that we smell it. There's some earthy tones here from a patchouli note, which is quite nice to add to a leather tone. And while we're on earthy tones, I smelled something mineral here as well, which again, with Galtieri, you tend to see these type of tones in his releases. The smoke show in this release, and there's a smoke show, is very pronounced in the opening from the incense. Maybe it's cade oil, it could be, or leather. It could actually even be from the oud, to be quite honest. Wherever it doesn't really matter where the smoke comes from. There is some smoke in this release. It comes off kind of ashy in some of the transitions here. So it does have like an ashy like smell. It's cloudy, it's full bodied, it works very well with the leather tones. It is quite dark into the midpoint of this scent, but later on the smoke really fades quite a bit. So again, this fragrance kind of goes really dark in the opening and then mellows into the back end of the release. Now I just want to roll the tape back a little bit because I spoke a little bit about spicy qualities in here, and I just kind of threw it under the rug a little bit. The major one that I detect in this one is black pepper up top. The black pepper, if you really dig deep in this release, when I did in this second wearing, it had some texture here. Like you really felt the roughness of the peppercorn. It really had a little bit of bite. There's a good amount of balsams here that gives the scent an oily quality. It made me think, and then I'm going back earlier in time here, of the tools that had some spoiled motor oil on them. You just put it on your leather casing, wrap it up, and it just soaked into that leather. That's really what that smelled like. There's some dustiness in here too, of course, from the oud, and there's some woods behind all this. Some from the oud, and mostly what I get is almost charred cedar chips here. They smell a little charred. That's probably from the rest of the composition making the cedar smell that way. The opening is dark and as interesting as it gets as a release. It really embodies the leather really well. Very unique, dare I say. It has some unique pieces, but overall the part that really intrigued me, and it's a minute piece of Cuoium, is the animalics. So I'm going back a little bit in this review, which I know Galtieri dabbles into the ouds, but I never really smelt anything like this in his compositions. Now I know it's a minute part of the release, but at the same time it makes this release so interesting, especially for someone that owns at least a dozen Galtieris. His formulas, as interesting as they are, to each their own, it does feel a little redundant at times. Here, this is where the interest peaks a bit for me. Now, once you get more into the dry down of this scent, like I said, this scent is a leather-based scent, but it loses many of the daring and strong qualities that it had in the opening. It really does mellow here. It's still dark, don't get me wrong, but it turns into from a raw, stiff, tanned leather that is soaked in oil to a beautiful, clean, suede-like leather. The earthy tones are still here to give the scent some added roughness, darkness. The woods, the cedar definitely amps up a bit here, takes a strong secondary note with some labdanum. The ambery glow shows up a bit here as well. So there's some minor sweetness, but it's truly overshadowed by the bigger, bolder, and drier notes. The ashy incense smoke still here, but a little lighter. Overall, Cuoium is a strong leather-based scent that has a story to tell. I've never truly felt a leather-based scent that felt like I was at the tannery. It's dirty, it's a little bloodied, salty, hairy, oiled up leather to the final product at the end of the fragrance, which is more of a beautiful leather. And it still takes a bit of those interesting parts at the end of the fragrance. Even though it's a suede-like leather, it still has a little bit of that bite still there. Not sure if that was the intention with this release by Mr. Galtieri, but to me and to my nose, it just piques up the interest for me. It was an interesting ride from just a small little sample. Now let's get into Seasons, Day, Night, Versatility, and Performance. Seasons, I feel like this one, of course, big and bold, mostly geared towards the fall and winter. Day or night, I feel like this is more of a nighttime scent. Big, bold leathers like that, mostly for the nighttime. Versatility, below average, of course, as per the review. It has some boldness to it. It all depends on you and your comfort level on wearing this type of scent. Performance, longevity was 10 to 12 plus hours, easy with above average projection. It's not a beast as far as projection goes. I didn't feel like it really jumped off my skin, even overdoing it, and I know that's a joke, with the Lucky Scent sample. I wore almost 3/4 of that sample in one wearing. It really never jumped as a beast mode release. Now, if I had a full bottle and I dosed myself a little bit more, it might be a different story. But right now, longevity is excellent. Projection is above average, so very good as far as performance goes. So my final thoughts on this one is that I love Nasomatto and Orto Parisi releases. Every time they release one, I do want to sniff it. And perhaps I was getting to the part of the journey that Galtieri can't surprise me anymore. But he did with this one. I really, not that I was falling out of love of this lineup. I'm really happy that he continues to release even Nasomattos. I thought that was the end of Nasomatto. He's still releasing some, but this one really spoke to me because I feel like I should have blind bought this one because I felt it was bottle worthy, especially looking at the notes. But now that I've tested it, it really did actually surprise me a little bit, and it gave me a story behind the fragrance. So now it's artistic, it's worthy of a purchase. So bravo to the brand of Orto Parisi. This is a solid release in a very crowded leather-based fragrance line. I feel like there's so many out there that you can delve into. So this is one that you at least need to sniff if you're a leather-based head like me. So if I had to give it a score currently, like I always do on Sampling Samples, this one is getting the perfect 10 out of 10 for me. I feel like it is an excellent leather-based fragrance, especially in the crowded genre. When I want this bottle as much as I do, it's got to be a 10. Now that you heard my take, I'd love to see yours in the comments below. Please let us know if you have smelt this fragrance, good or bad. I love to see different type of sides of the coin in every release. And as always, a great report fragrance will make a lasting impression. Choose your scent wisely. Thanks for watching YouTube. Have a good one.